Bar. Welcome to this webcast. It's about how to use XmR charts in Microsoft Power BI. A really special welcome also to all of you XmR advocates who are in our pump community. I can see quite a few of you joining us live, which is excellent. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, though. I am with Michelle Decker, who I will introduce to you in just a little minute. Michelle and I created this webcast for you because, as you already know, if we really want to get the truth from our KPIs, XmR charts are the best tool to display them. Now, XmR charts give us clear signals of true change, and it also makes it a lot easier for us to set targets and also to quantify our progress toward those targets. But typical XmR chart tools are pretty ugly, they're clunky, and they're even more complex than they really need to be. Even the pump XmR chart spreadsheet template does take some manual effort to use, but today we're going somewhere to solving that problem. We're all about to learn from the creator of the new Power BI XmR chart tool, Michelle Decker, and we're going to learn how easy and fast it is to help us get the truth out of our KPIs. Now, specifically what we'll cover is a quick refresher about what an XmR chart is and how it gets the truth out of our KPIs. We'll look at how the Power BI XmR chart tool works and also what it's like to use the Power BI XmR chart tool. And I think Michelle is going to use some data from one of my own real KPIs. We'll find out which one he's picked. Now, it might be a really good time now for us to get a feel for how much you are using XmR charts in your organization. So I'm going to run a little poll asking you how widely are XmR charts used in your organization. So please click which one roughly applies to the use of XmR charts in your organization. I'll give you a little bit longer to do that. I've got nearly half of you voted already. That's tremendous. Excellent. We're at about 2/3, 3/4 of you have voted. That's excellent participation, everyone. Thank you. Let's see where we start leveling off. And these results are looking quite interesting. Not quite what I expected. Okay, great. I think we're at about 80%. We're kind of leveling off at about 80%. So I'll give you 3 more seconds to vote, and then I'm going to close the poll and share the results with you. Okay, closing the poll now. And everyone, take a look at this. By and large, nearly half of you, or just over half of you, you've got at least a few people using XmR charts in your organization. But gosh, 28% not at all, and 18% of you, it's only you doing it. So we've certainly got some opportunity to grow the use of XmR charts. I'm hoping that when you've got an app that's intuitive and easy to use, like the one we're about to learn about today, that you'll be able to increase that usage of XmR charts in your organization. Lovely. Thank you, everyone, for giving that feedback. Okay, now, whether or not you use Power BI, Microsoft's tool, and whether or not you use XmR charts extensively in your organization, this webcast will show you the power of XmR charts and hopefully start you on a mission to find the easiest way to incorporate them and automate them into your organization's performance reporting. Okay, so I mentioned Michelle Decker a few times already. Who is this guy? Let me introduce you to him. Of course, that's me on the left there. We're not going to dwell on me. You know enough about me by now, I'm sure. And if you don't, just go to staceybar.com. You can learn as much or as little as you want. I want to introduce you now to my friend and colleague, Michelle Decker, who's here with us. He's live in, are you in Utrecht today, Michelle?
Just outside, but yeah, you could call it Utrecht.
In the Netherlands. I've been there a few times, thanks to Michelle, in fact. Now, he is the founder of a data company, Nova Silver, and within the data world, he focuses on the interaction between data and the people consuming or using this data. So besides developing all kind of data products like this XmR chart, a type of control chart for Power BI, he also is a data visualization and data literacy trainer. Now, Michelle, please, can you let everyone know a bit more about Nova Silver and what your team does there?
Excellent. Thank you, Stacy. First of all, thank you all for joining us today, and Stacy for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. Well, at Nova Silva, if I have to keep it really short, and I know you prefer that way, I would say that there's one thing we love a lot at Nova Silva, and that's data. But there's one thing we even love more than the data itself, and that's making good use of the data. And that's also one of the reasons why for years now we have been involved in Pump and working with your methodology. And to help our customers in the best way, we support them in different type of activities. So we help them with collecting data, but also with storing it, and in the end also sharing it. And myself, I'm most of the time involved in the sharing bit, where how can we make this data available to people so they can make better sense of it. And that's also the reason why I have the pleasure to be here today to talk about the control XmR chart. Because at Nova Silva, we, besides developing data products like we're going to look at today, we also do some consulting, and we give some trainings. We do, and as you said, most of our trainings are around data visualization and data literacy, how to make sense of data. Because nowadays everybody needs to be data driven or data informed, if you want to call it like that. But what does that mean besides technology? What kind of knowledge do people need to be able to do that? So that's what we do at Nova Silva. So we are in love with data, and we work all day with data, and that's it. And I focus most of the time on how to make sense of all the data that we have there.
Finny, for those of you who know me pretty well, you'll now understand why Michelle and I have stayed in contact so much since we first met a few years ago. And it was a few years ago, Michelle, you remember exactly how we came to meet?
Well, yeah, well, you call it maybe a few years ago, but this is 2013.
Oh,
I
wow.
looked it up, Stacy. This is a long time ago. So this is all right. But I definitely know, because as you can see here on the picture, here are well, the two of us, and this other gentleman you see there is as some might know him, but some might not, is called Stephen Few. And Stephen Few, the author and also trainer on data visualization. And I have consumed all his trainings anywhere I could get my hands on them. And actually we happened to be at the same time at the same place in one certain time, and we got together, the three of us, and that was the first time I think we actually met, Stacy.
It was, yeah, absolutely. I've tried to consume as much of Stephen Few's trainings as I could as well, and his stuff is absolutely great. So I think we're both equally inspired by him.
Yeah.
So everyone, since then, Michelle and I've collaborated on quite a few things, I guess. And today's collaboration is to bring some XmR chart automation into your world, with Power BI at least. Before we dive in, I thought you might appreciate a bit of a reminder of what an XmR chart actually is and why we love it so much. Please note, this is not going to be a training session. I am not teaching you about XmR charts. Because you're here, we're assuming that you already at least know what they are, at least using them, and we could see from the poll results that the vast majority of you are. And maybe just give me a raise of hands for those of you who are pretty comfortable with XmR charts, because that will give me feedback about how quickly I can move through this next little refresher. Hands up if you're pretty familiar with them. Okay, great. Oh yeah, lots and lots of hands going up there. Actually, there's so many of us here. We've maxed out my number of seats on a webcast today, so it's a record for quite a while. Okay, thanks everybody. I know now I don't need to go too deeply into this, but I will let you know I have got a fact sheet that you can download from the handout section in your webcast control panel, and that will help you dive more deeply into XmR charts if I end up going too quick for your personal preference. Right. So this is an XmR chart. It's written about on my blog, but if you're in our pump community, you actually were trained in XMR charts at your pump training. So this is just a quick orientation to the XMR chart. Like I said, I've got a bunch of links where you can dive in and learn more in the little fact sheet that's in the handouts section of the webcast control panel there. So grab that anytime you want. The first chart here is called the X chart. That's where we put our performance measure values. The second chart, the one underneath, is the MR chart, and it's calculated from our performance measure values. And the values in that MR or moving ranges chart help us to identify signals in the X chart, the one that we're mostly focusing on to interpret our measure. Now, so our measure values go into the X chart. We plot them as a time series. These are the actual measure values in each particular period, which might be monthly or weekly. We don't use moving averages, for example, in XMR charts. The data's not appropriate for that. So each month has to be just that month's measure values. We have a central line as well in the XMR chart. It's calculated from at least the first 5 or so measure values. And it really is kind of like the current level of performance. It's much more informative to look at the central line to know where performance currently is than to look at any individual measure value. Then we've got this blue range, which is basically a coloured in zone between a lower natural process limit and an upper natural process limit. They show us the amount of normal, natural, routine variability or variation that our particular performance measure has. You must, if you're familiar with XMR charts, you know that the natural process limits are not targets. They're not the same as targets. Targets tell us where we want performance to be, where it should be, but these natural process limits tell us where performance actually is. And we set targets because where performance actually is not where we want it to be. So they're two different things. The moving range chart down the bottom there, just quickly, these moving range values are calculated as pretty much the successive differences between measure values in the chart above. We have an average moving range, and that's like the central line, and it helps us calculate where those upper and lower control process limits go in the X chart. A moving ranges chart also has an upper range limit, and there are some kind of signals we can look for in an MR chart, but we're not going into that level of advanced XMR chart use today. Now, these charts are calculated from specific statistical rules. We don't make them up. If you want to learn more about them, remember, I've got that handout there that you can download right now in the handouts section, and it'll give you an overview and also links to a lot more detailed and relevant content that's free on my Measure Up blog. So I might just lower everyone's hands for now. Just raise your hand if you've been able to find that handout and you've grabbed it already. Just let me know that it's not too hard to find. Okay, great. Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, Scott, Rod, Pete. Tanya. Okay, excellent. Martin, wonderful. It's good to see so many friends and familiar names on this webcast. Good. All right. If you have any trouble finding it, just type in the questions box, and I have my wonderful webcast assistant today, Claire, in the background, and she'll be able to point you to it. Okay. Can anyone see a signal in this chart? If you do, just quickly type in the questions box what you think the signal is, where you think it roughly is. Now, this is a test mostly for those of you who know XMR charts, but also for those of you who might not be too familiar, but you want to have a go. And what you're looking for is some unusual behavior in this chart. Well, Blake's first up. He says the last 8 points, starting around October, yeah, about October 99, says Jeff. Mark knows it's a long run. So yeah, quite a few of you are seeing that same signal, which is right here. Whoops, there we go. And that is a signal of change. It does meet one of the signal rules for XMR charts. Now, after you see a signal in your XMR chart, it means that performance has changed. So now we have a different baseline or current level of performance. And that means we've got to recalculate the central line and natural process limits so that they match our current level of performance. And here's how we go about doing that. It'll look like this. So the recalculation happens because performance has changed. It's now at a different level. And that particular signal told us that performance is now averaging at a higher level than it did before. So the old central line and upper and lower limits don't tell us what performance is actually doing. They tell us what performance used to do. We need to recalculate them so we can see what performance is doing now. And the change that happened to cause this improvement happened somewhere around, as a few of you noted, around October 99. Of course, there are specific rules for how and when to recalculate, and they depend on the kind of signal that you see. Most dashboard and business intelligence software applications do not include these charts, unfortunately. They just haven't been popular, I suppose, because most of the business world just doesn't know about them. For our measure up community, and in particular our pump users around the world, XmR charts are very well known, and you all see the value in using them. But so far with pump, we've really only just used spreadsheets to build them. Curious to know though, what kind of methods are you using to build your XmR charts? So let me just launch another poll really quickly. What methods do you use to build your XmR charts? Go ahead and answer. Just noticing a few comments come in here. Eric is pointing out that these charts are very well known in the world of Six Sigma, and they absolutely are. I think Six Sigma is probably what made them more famous even than when they were introduced back in the olden days of the quality improvement movement. As you're filling out the poll there, a few people are mentioning the apps that they're using, so I thought you might all like to know. Michael's saying he uses Minitab for XmR charts. Ken says he uses JMP. I don't know if that's the same app. I remember when back in my days as a statistician, Ken, there was something that we just called Jump. It might be the same thing, I'm not sure. But they're statistical packages basically. Mick says Sigma XL. Roy knows about our developing pump app, and we've got XmR charts in there. Ryan says adaptive discovery. Paul, also colleague of Michelle's, Paul also says our pump app. A few mentions of Minitab. Okay. Peter says Stata, one I'm not familiar with. Great. Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing those, everyone. Now let's see, has everyone finished voting? I've only got 70% of you so far. That's not growing real quick. A few more seconds and I'll close and share the results with you. I think the answer will give you a clue as just to how many of our pump community are joining us today. Okay, closing the poll. That's about 3/4 of you have voted. And here's the results, everybody. So 44% of you are using our pump Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. Once you get used to it, it's pretty easy, but when you're wanting to keep building these XmR charts and share them widely and integrate them with your other reporting, we really do want to automate them as much as possible. 18% of you aren't using anything, and interestingly, that lines up with I think it was it 18%, or it was probably a little bit more that aren't using XmR charts at all. Macro-driven spreadsheet, there's QI macros. I don't think any of you mentioned that in the comments, but that's certainly out there. I think that one's complex and not quite as beautiful as we want graphs to look in our dashboards these days. And BI software is what some of you are also using, and something else. So that's great. Alrighty. Thanks for sharing that. We've got quite a mix there, but I can see that most of you are using are not automating them yet anyway. All right. Now, personally, I am no expert in dashboard and business intelligence apps. I don't want to be either, but I do hear your frustration in not being able to automate these XmR charts in either your favorite app or whatever reporting system that your organization uses. So Michel Decker is a long-term user of Pump, and because his company specializes in data visualization, he's in the perfect position to get XmR charts automated, at least in Power BI as a start. I don't know if you've got plans beyond that, Michelle.
Hey, there's always plans. The question is there time? So
Indeed. So we'll see how that unfolds, everybody. Now, Power BI did not include XMR charts. Michelle, he decided to fix that, and I think you're all hanging on the edge of your seat now. It's time for Michelle, for you to guide us through what you did and how these XMR charts in Power BI work. Now, just bear with me, Michelle. I'm going to hand over mouse control to you.
well, while you do the technology, Stacy, maybe I can give a short introduction. The thing what happened is that, so as said, for years we have been doing all kind of things with Pump, and obviously also with XMR charts. And about 2 years ago, a customer of us that we did a lot of training for, a lot of data visualization trainings for, they asked us if we could make a data visualization training specifically for Power BI. And we always kept away from making these trainings tool specific, but okay, finally they convinced us, please do help us, because we are using more and more Power BI, and we would like to combine the theory of doing good visualizations with Power BI. And so we did, and we prepared the training and we were building it. And unfortunately, when we started creating the training, we found out that we were missing a lot of the visuals that we would normally use. So, and we advocate a lot of the effective charts that that you can find out there. Also, the things that people like Stephen Few talk about. And so we started looking around, because we knew there was an opportunity for third parties to build visuals. So we started looking for third parties to help us out with those visuals we were missing. But unfortunately, the ones that we found and the ones that we could talk to, well, if I may put it shortly, they were much more focused on visual distraction, as I call it, and not enough on effective communication. And so in the end, we decided, okay, if we can't find it, maybe we should then build it. Huh? We have some experience with building visuals, and actually, since we started this process with Microsoft, we decided to start with the control chart, because that was a chart that we had a lot of experience with, and we decided, okay, well, you know what, let's do that the first one. And actually the same as you just experienced in your poll, Stacy, we didn't expect to have a lot of interaction with people. We didn't expect to have a lot of reactions from people, because we thought, well, control chart is a very specialized chart. It's not a standard bar chart, to give you an example. And so we thought, well, it will be okay. It's a good way to test things. But to our surprise, last year, when we launched it somewhere in spring, summer, and by the end of the year, we had more than 10,000 downloads of the visual. So surprisingly, lots of people were interested in using it. And that's also the reason why we're talking about it today. So that was how we got to building visuals.
Oh, that's great. Excellent. There was something that you'd said, Michelle, in there about visual distractions. I
Mm-hmm.
think so many of the charts that we end up having in our performance reports and dashboards are exactly that. They're just visual distractions. Probably a really good term to learn to throw around a little bit, so that we can at least start the conversation about more informative visuals.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of the things we see around us, at least what I see around me, is that yes, a lot of when we talk about data visualization, a lot of people are more interested in fancy pictures, and not in learning something from the data. And well, I think that that is a more important aspect of it. We need to learn something from the data, so we can do something with it. And that's basically what we did. But okay, I see. I think the technology works. Let's see if I can. Oh yeah, there you go. I can click and it works. Great. So I'll talk you. I'll go through a couple of slides very briefly, because I think most of the people in this session will probably want to see how it works. So I have a demo prepared, and I'd like to show you actually within Power BI how it works. But just to give a short introduction. As said, we were triggered by some questions from customers. I think Power BI is a tool that is everywhere. Most companies I meet, they have it in some form or the other. And so we decided, okay, but what are the charts that we are missing? And that was our starting point. So we started off with the charts that we were missing, but also our customers were missing, and we decided to build those. Furthermore, we also decided that we were not going to rebuild the world. So we were very much focused on expanding on what already is there. So Microsoft built Power BI with a lot of standard features and functionality, and we're going to expand on that, and we're not going to rebuild it. So a standard line and a standard bar chart, hey, that's already in Power BI. We don't need to do that. But anything else, anything around it, for instance, the control chart, is something that absolutely fits within our offering. And obviously, we want to help people to make best use of these visuals and apply these data viz best practices. That's not always as easy as it sounds, because in the end, we're only delivering you the basic chart type, and you can change all the colors and you can make it as distracting as you would like to. But we're trying to help you with it a bit. So that's still in there. And the other thing there is that maybe not all of you know, but if you build visualizations for Power BI as a third party, like we do, you can get them certified by Microsoft. And we said from day one, all our visuals will be certified by Microsoft. It means a lot. If you want to know more about it, just look it up. But one of the basic things why we did it is that it gives every customer a bit of security that we have no access to your data. So if you use Power BI and you use our visuals, we don't know how you use it. So don't expect me to know what you're using it for. It's certified by Microsoft. Microsoft reviews our source code to make sure that we don't do strange things, which I think is an excellent service they provide. The other thing we also decided to do is that Power BI has its own interface, and we decided that our visuals should blend into that interface. So we are not going to introduce a new user interface there. That might sound obvious, but some other companies that also provide visuals for Power BI, they have built their own interfaces on top of it. Gives them more freedom, obviously. We explicitly decided not to do this, so that if you know how to work in a Power BI environment, you also know how to use our visuals. So there's no new interface learning, where is this button hidden, etc., etc. And then, but I'm going to keep this very short, is that we decided to license the creators, the people that built the reports, and give unlimited users access to the content. So if you build a report, the builder needs a license, but then everybody in your organization can consume the results of your efforts. Today we're going to talk about the control chart, as you can see here on the top left corner, but all these others are there as well. And again, if you want to know more information about it, we have a website. I think it's also on one of the slides later on, visuals.novasilva.com, and you can find all information about these. Or otherwise, if you're already familiar with Power BI, go to the app source of Microsoft. You search for Nova Silva and you will find all these different charts, and maybe some of them would suit you. But today, let's have a look at the control chart. Oh, I was using my keyboard, but my keyboard doesn't work for that. There you go. Okay, Stacy already explained the control chart itself, so I'm not gonna repeat a lot of it. But as you can imagine, we have an actual line, in this case the gray line, like Stacy also showed an example. Then we can calculate a central line, which is minimum 5 data points that we use to calculate this central line. And then based on that central line and the actual line, we can also determine an upper and a lower control limit, or the natural upper and the natural lower limit, like Stacy named them. And that's the first basis that the chart will actually do for you. And then the next step is, so this calculation, which you now may be doing the Excel sheet from Stacy, we actually implemented all these calculations already within the visual. But we also went one step further, because as most of you have seen that there was a signal in the example that Stacy showed. We also wanted to have some help on determining where the signals are. So besides having to look at it for ourselves, we decided, okay, well, you know what, if we can determine these signals, why don't we implement them directly? And then you get something like, oh, sorry. And then you get the fact that we implemented these 4 signals that we are trying to detect. And The most obvious one, if any value is outside of the natural limits, then you need a signal. There will be no recalculation, but there is a signal. Then we have the rule that 7 values in a row are above the central line or they are below the central line, it's a signal, etc., etc. Well, most of you know about control charts, so these are the basic rules that we have implemented within the control chart visual within Power BI. And if you do that, then suddenly you can, instead of having it like you see here, where we have the central line and the upper low control limit, well, constant all the periods, we can actually ask the chart to help us determine where the signals are, and that's what you see happening here. So here you see that there's actually 2 signals. So there's 2 times you see the step in the central line, the blue central line you see there, and here you've got a first signal, and there you got a second signal. And again, you can do this manually because obviously that's maybe a better choice, but for some data it's also interesting to maybe automate this. And what we have done in the control chart XmR is that we give you both options. So you can decide, okay, let's automate it all. Let's get the signals in there as well. Or you can say, you know what, I'll do it by hand. I know where the signals should be, and I'll give it to you. Those both options are available within the chart.
Michelle?
Yeah.
I'm going to preempt 2 possible questions from people at this point. One is the signal rules. You've automated 7 points in a row as what we would call a long run, and that varies. I think in some apps or kind of bodies of knowledge they use 6, and in others, and the one that I probably follow more so is Donald Wheeler's work, where it's 8. So I think everybody, the point to remember here is there isn't probably one single correct number for the number of points on the same side as the central line, for example. It's more about the probability of that many points being on the same side of the central line. It's being unusual and truly indicative of an actual change in performance. So I don't think we need to get hung up too much on that. 7 is probably the most widely accepted number, which is likely your reason, Michelle, for choosing that.
Yeah,
so
and actually, Stacey, good that you mentioned, and I'll show also in the demo. We chose these numbers because we found them a lot, and indeed, so we also looked at Mr. Wheeler's work. But we also understand that you need to be able to change that depending on the circumstances. So in the control chart XmR, you can change these variables. So you can decide whether it's 6 or 7 or 8 or even more. It's within a certain bandwidth, so we're not going to make it extreme. You can not fill in 100. But you can go, any of those numbers that you mentioned are fit in well. So you can actually, let's say the rule engine, you can tweak it by changing these variables. Yeah, I'll show that later on.
Lovely. The second question I want to preempt is that looking at the X chart that we've got displayed there, you showed 2 signals. The first was a shift up, and then a further, like about 2/3 the way along, there's another shift up. But I think some people will be looking at that and saying, isn't there a signal earlier than that, a run below the central line? And technically there isn't. One of those points is actually sitting either just on the central line or just above it, and so technically there isn't a long run there. So when you automate rules, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get the technical interpretation. But as humans, we might look at that and say, well, you know what, that really actually could be a signal, very likely is a signal. And if we know our measure and we know the system that measure is monitoring for us, we'll be able to make that call. And this is one of the reasons Donald Wheeler will say his preference is not to go blindly with automating signals. You have to have a human look at it and interpret it. So when Michelle and the team have put these signal automations in there, like you mentioned before, it's probably mostly a starting point for you, just so, because a lot of them will be right, but don't ever forget to be the human that looks at it and puts some common sense over the top of it as well. So sorry to jump in there, Michelle. I was just imagining those 2 questions were going to come up.
Oh, and I think it's very valuable that you add that, Stacey. So in the end, we're not going to be able to automate your decision making itself. So you still, so it still needs a human being to interpret what's going on and make a decision on, okay, does it make sense, including where do you recalculate or not. So that's also why we have given the full freedom of, okay, you can automate it. For some people, that makes a lot of sense. or you can do it all, let's say, specific. You can also specify everything, including when I need to recalculate, etc. And hey, depending on your situation and what kind of data you're looking at, hey, it probably will be one or the other, or maybe a combination of the two, but that's up to the users. But indeed, I think XMRs are great tools to help you find what's going on in your data, but it's not something that will do it for you. At the end, you need a human being to interpret those. Yeah. And said, most of the time that I've been showing things is we have been looking at the X chart, because most of the time when we talk about control charts or XMR charts, but most people show the X chart. But we also included the MR chart. So the one you see here, so there's also an MR chart, and again with a moving range and an average moving range and a range upper limit. Again, both charts. So if you open one chart, there's an option to open the second one as well. But again, I'll show that as to the demo later on. All right. Well, I think it's a good moment. Let's get out of presentations and let's go into actual screens.
I'm going to make you the presenter now, Michelle. So everybody will be switching over to a computer screen in the Netherlands from this one here in Australia, and hopefully that's going to be okay. Why do we have that showing? Oh no, there we go. That's better.
I can imagine that not a lot of people, when they woke up this morning, would expect to go to see a screen all the way down in the Netherlands. Huh? But here we are.
Can we just check, Michelle, that everyone's seeing that okay? I'm not quite getting the. I might just ask for a quick hands up if you're seeing Michelle's screen now, which will be mostly white, but it'll show just a few things. Yep. Okay. That's sounding fine. Okay. Cool. Please go ahead, Michelle. I just wanted to make sure that we're seeing you.
Cool. Again, like Stacy wasn't going to tell a lot about XMRs. I'm not going to do either, but and I'm not going to explain to you how Power BI works, because I assume that most of you know, and if not, hey, maybe you can have a closer look. First of all, I would like to show you some things as the end result. And what you're seeing here is a web page. This is the Power BI service, as they call it. So this is the web interface on Power BI, and I've prepared a couple of control charts on some data that Stacy has supplied me. Let me go to the right screen there. And so I asked Stacy, could you give me some data that we could use for this? And here you see actually two X charts, to be precise. And the one at the bottom you see there, that's the one that is completely based on the data I got from Stacy, or maybe even more exact. That's the data that was calculated in the control chart sheets that she supplies. So if you make use of it, and I saw in the last poll that what is it, 44% use the pump template.
Yeah.
This is, let's say, based on that. So the one that you see here at the bottom, and as you can see, this is about sales page visits, and I believe there's one signal in here. You see that there is a little bump going up here. Where is it? Somewhere between August and September it happens.
Yeah.
So that's the original one. On the top, I have again the same data series, but this time I have not included all the derived columns which you would normally find in the pump template. I only used the date. So there's a date on the x-axis, and you see the gray line with the dots, and those are the results that actually came from it. And the visual calculated the central line and the lower and the upper control limits, as you can see here on the tooltip. And so this is what the control chart will do for you. And then in Power BI, I've put these two buttons on there. This is not standard of the visual itself, but it's simply to show you that if I now would switch on the auto calculation, auto detection of signals, if I do that, then you'll see that in my case, I have, instead of one signal in that period here in the middle, I also have a second signal at the end. I don't know why we didn't have that signal in the Excel sheet, Stacy, to be honest. But if I look at it,
I can explain that. It's because of that massive outlier, and I thought I wanted to see because after that outlier happens, I wanted to see how performance was going to stabilize beyond that. Sometimes an outlier is just weird and it's a
Yeah.
one-off thing, but sometimes an outlier is like the trigger of something new that's going to start, and I was waiting to see if something new would start. So I was taking the human look at it and put context around the signal. So
Okay.
that's why I didn't recalculate it.
Excellent. Makes sense. And but this is what then happened. So basically, what we did in the control chart, we said, okay, you know what? Let's switch on the auto detection. You see these little numbers there. The numbers actually tell you what kind of signal it is. So if I put my mouse on it, you'll actually see also the rule. So the value is above the UCL or below the LCL. In this case, it's below the lower control limit. And we also saw a number 2. And this again is it also tells you which of the rules cause the signal, and we have another number 2 there as well. So this is basically what the control chart will do for you. Similar to this, you can also say, you know what, because you also gave me this example, which is about website visits. And again, the one on the bottom is all the data that came from Stacy's pump template, and where she already calculated the central line and the upper and the lower control limits, and everything is already there. And the one above again is the one that we have. And again, I can do here on and then switch on the calculation, and you see that there are some differences, obviously, because well, maybe Stacy has decided that in the beginning, some of these signals simply don't make a lot of sense. I don't want to start doing it directly. But if you automate it, you get this like it is. But again, you see there's lots of signals going on here. And what we're looking at later, because I will go into also the Power BI desktop, where we're going to create together one of these charts. You'll see that you can change this. You can switch these rules on or off. You see a lot of these number 4 signals, 3 out of 4 values. You can switch them off. You can simply say, I don't want to have that one, or you want to change the variables. I don't want to have 3 out of 4. I want to have 5 out of 6 or something like that. So that's all some things you can change. This is the default behavior. Another thing that I got from you, Stacy, is the question. Okay, well, if we have these control charts, then maybe we also want to make them part of something bigger. Maybe we have a dashboard or something else. And then I need to briefly tell you that the term dashboard within a Power BI environment has a special meaning. Because if I go back to the one that we had here, you basically could say, if I take this one, you could pin a visual. So a visual from a report that we're looking at, you could pin it and say, you know what, let's add this to an existing dashboard I already have. So let's do that. And then if I go to that dashboard, actually I already had one there, is that it just pinned this visual that I had on my dashboard. So it's so here I can create my dashboards and make it bigger and smaller, etc., etc. And the basic idea of a dashboard within Power BI is that you have visuals from all different reports, and you can pin them onto these dashboards, and then you can save them as something to be used. And again, all the interaction still works. And if you want to go to details, you simply click on the chart itself, and it takes you to the report to go to the details. But this is how Power BI sees dashboards. Most people, when I talk about dashboard, most people assume something more like this, where you say, you know what, I've got all these different visuals, and I want to have some interaction between them. So in this case, on the top left corner, I have put the control chart in there, and this is about value. The variable is about perceived value. So this is then our control chart. And again, I also let's auto calculate it. And as you can see in this data, we have 2 signals. There's a little drop here in the beginning, and there's a raise here. What is it? Around May 2019. And we have 2 additional charts on this same screen. Here you've got a dot plot, which basically shows for each year all the individual scores that were there. And on the right hand side, we call this a dumbbell chart. You basically see that the orange is the same as here, is the central line value, and the blue is the median value for that year. So you can see that 2016 was just above the central line, whereas 17 and 18 were clearly below, and then 19 a bit above, and then 20 bigger above. So actually these 2, the dip and the raise here, are actually also visible in other charts. And what's now so special about this within a Power BI environment? Well, anything that you put on one single screen interacts. So if I click on this single item, you'll see that now on the dot plot there is this bigger circle and there's a small circle. So the bigger one is the one that we've selected. And here on the dumbbell chart, you see that this one is still on the same color and the rest is lighter. It's made lighter. So you can actually select items in any of the charts. So now I'm doing it in the control chart, but you can also do it by doing it in any of the other charts. So if I do it here, then I now selected 2017. You see the 2017 points are now bigger on the control chart, and they're also bigger here on the strip plot. And this is what I referred to earlier on. We want to make it as seamlessly as possible to integrate with anything you have in Power BI. So this is standard Power BI behavior, and we simply want to make sure that all our visuals would do that same thing. So it doesn't matter which visual you take, whether it's ours or one of the standard visuals of Power BI, all this interaction, all the functionality still goes with it, including things like you want to drill down on these years. I don't want to see the individual years, but I want to see the quarters. You can do a drill down and you see the details. All this is standard behavior, and we simply stay close to that. Okay. So this is then what the service, so the Power BI web interface looks like. Most people, when they start working with Power BI, they start with this. This is the desktop version. So this is Power BI desktop. And what I would like to do with you now is let's build a control chart from scratch with our control chart visual. And how does that work? So let's imagine that you have your Power BI desktop available, and how would that then work? And obviously, the first thing we need is data. So I got the data from Stacy in Excel. So I'll open up the Excel file. And then I'm going to use the new website visits numbers there. So as you can see here, these are all the columns that we have available in that specific spreadsheet. And I'm not going to do anything to it. So I'm going to simply say load it. So load this into Power BI. So while we wait, it's loaded into Power BI. And now here on the right-hand side, we see that we have all these fields available to be used in some form or the other. Here we have all the visuals available by default. And if you want to use some others, you can say get more visuals. And then actually what happens, it opens what Microsoft calls the app source. So it's like a marketplace of visual components that you can use there. And now, as always, the connection takes some time. So let's see where it opens up. Okay, well, while we're waiting for it, so what we're going to see now is all the visuals that are available. We're going to look for the control chart so we can add it to the screen. Maybe Stacey, you have a question for me. Meanwhile, while we wait.
Yeah, good idea, Michelle. There are a few coming through. I'll just pick out a couple. Chris pointed out that on my pump workshop rating XmR chart, 10 is a natural ceiling that the data can't go above, and so really an upper natural process limit shouldn't be above 10. Is there a way to set that, to set a conditional upper or lower control limit? Like sometimes a lower limit shouldn't ever go below 0 because the data logically can't. Is there a way to set like a maximum or a minimum that those two can take, irrespective of how they're calculated?
Okay, well, we didn't include that yet. So one of the things you can do within the charts of Power BI itself is you can determine how far the axis will go. So if you, for instance, say I got values between 0 and 10 and I never want to go below 0, you could actually say, okay, well, the axis will never go below 0. That's something you can do.
Yeah.
But it still will calculate with the number that goes below 0. So it's not like the lower control limit will show 0 as the lowest value. No, it might show -4 or -3 because that's the actual result of the calculation.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Has this loaded the way you want to?
Yeah, there it is. So this is the app source from Microsoft, and you can then search for visuals. And in this case, I'll search for our visuals. So here we have all the visuals. Again, this is available to anyone out there. and I'll go down, and then here we've got the control chart XMR, and I'll add it to my environment. It has loaded it now, and as you can see, we now have this little red icon there with an XMR in it. And if I click on it, it actually will open on my canvas, the screen that you see in front of you. You'll see I have my control chart there. If you from here don't know where to go, if you click here on Get Help, you actually will go to one of our knowledge base articles, and it will help you to figure out what you need to do. But in this case, what you see here on the right-hand side is all kind of fields that you can specify. And the first one is axis. It's actually the x-axis. So I've got here something which is time, the month. So let me put that one on first. And the next one I need to put there is actual numbers, and these are the new website visits. So I simply drag it in there, and the moment I drop this one, you'll actually see it starts drawing. And we want to make sure that as soon as possible, we want to show you some effect. And now it's all defaults on. So default colors, default everything is taking place right now. And to give you an idea about what default means, next to the fields tab, there is also a formatting tab, and here you've got all the settings for any visual, and including ours. So as you can see here, you can set some things on the axis, you can change colors, or something on the data points, you can include or not include the moving range chart. So if I simply switch it on, you'll see that now I suddenly have two charts, because now I have got the X and the MR chart. Some things about the calculation, and then there is more basic stuff about the environment within Power BI. So let's have a closer look. The x-axis, the time axis that you see there, well, besides all the typical things on colors and what have you, and text size, which are all typical, any chart that you'll select from here above, a standard Microsoft chart, will have the same settings. There's one specific setting that we have added, and that's that you can decide what type of scale would you like to put it on there. So I know that some people actually use time in certain processes to use in control charts. So you can actually say, what type of level do I want to show on this chart? It was, I think, default on month. That's only how it shows here on the axis. If I put my mouse on here, you'll still see that this is Saturday, September 1st, 2018. It still shows that exact data point that it's in there, but it's simply which labels do you want to put on there. So again, let's get away from the x-axis, and then the y-axis, like I just explained. So let's assume that we don't want to see anything that goes below 0 here. I could actually say, you know what, my axis should start at 0. And if I do so, you'll see that then the chart will show accordingly. So this is what you can do if you want to limit the range that you're going to show, but the internal calculation will make use of all the values. And if you simply remove it again, then it's back to automatic. And again, most of these things, I would like to say go and have a look at it. One of the things that a lot of people look towards a lot is that you see these grid lines, which is something typical within a Power BI chart. Well, again, you can also switch them off. I don't know if it's visible on the screen sharing, but this is. I'll switch them on again. By default, they're on, and you can change them, etc. Sorry?
You can see it. I can see them turn off and turn back on again. Yeah.
Very good.
There is a quick question here about the x-axis that somebody's asked. I think now's probably the time to share it with you, Michelle. Is there any limitation at the moment where the x-axis can only be date? So like Ryan says, they use ship voyage or train journey ID, not a date. And for the same applies for, some of you might have noticed my pump workshop feedback XMR chart that we just looked at. That's not really date oriented either. It's just each specific workshop. So a true individuals kind of XMR chart. Can the x-axis be something else? Can it be some other sequential number rather than a date?
Okay, so the thing is, there's actually two versions of the control chart. So the one that you're seeing here, which gives you full flexibility, and the one that we started off with last year, which we call only control chart. So this one we call the control chart XMR, and the other is control chart. That's fully automated, and there you can also put other things on the x-axis. We decided, because we understood that a lot of people had some difficulties doing it, so we decided to put a date on there. So so you can put other things in there, but most of the time this will be a date. So if you're going to use this, try it out. If not, if this is something that let's say, is bothering you to make use of it, let us know, because we can change that. But we have decided initially, because the ones that we see all the time are all about dates. But as you just said, maybe there's also other ways to put it. Right now, we said we take date. And the reason why we chose date is that a lot of the, let's say, nice features of dates is that it's very predictable. And I can also calculate distances, where if I make it a categorical access, because that's what it then becomes, I get difficulties in things like ordering, distances, and those kind of things. So it takes a lot of extra work. But
No,
and not for us, but I mean from the user.
It's definitely the case that most performance measures are going to be in some kind of date arrangement, a summary that's done every week or month or day or quarter or whatever. But yeah, it would be interesting to see how that could evolve. So thanks, Michelle. Back to where you were up to.
No, and the thing there is, and I like to also invite everybody who's in the call today, yeah, and not only if you're in the call, but also if you record it later or you heard about it. If you have any ideas or suggestions, just send us an email. Because the thing there is that we base most of the things that we do in the tools that we build are based on requests from customers. So please, if you have suggestions, ideas, don't hesitate, send us an email and give us your feedback, because it would be very suitable. If it makes sense, I always say, technically it's always possible. The question is, can we explain it and can we make it standard enough?
Given
but okay, for the last minutes, I just want to show one more thing. One of the things that we got a lot of questions about when it's visual. So within Power BI, you can have all kind of templates which determine what your color schema will be. Yeah? So for instance, I can click on this electric theme. And if I do that, then you'll see that the chart will change some of the colors. And so all of these, if this blue one, storm cold, everything will be in blue shades, or this one, which will be more brownish. So any of our charts will actually react to whatever happens there. But for instance, if I look at some of these examples you've shown, Stacy, it was not a gray area, it was like a bluish area. So what I can do here is say, you know what, let's make the upper and lower control limit area light blue, and maybe the central line, I don't know, maybe I'll make that that one black, and then we'll keep it something like that. Or you know what we can do is we keep this blue and we make the actual line maybe dark gray. There you go. Whatever you would like to do that. So you can use themes, or you can do it manually. And then obviously, yeah, so also I've seen lots of things going on the way you say, okay, let's put markers on the actual line. And I see that we have an exception there. So let me make that color the same as well. There you go. And you can put all kind of additional items around the data. You can make the sizes bigger or smaller, make the lines thicker or thinner, all these kind of options. And then the last thing before we have to go, it's the calculation. And as I said, if I switch off auto calculation, then it simply takes the initial fields and calculates, etc. And here at the bottom, you can see we use the first 5 values by standard, but I also saw that some of your sheets were containing 6. So if you change it, it will make use of 6. And if I now do the recalculation again, it looks a bit different. And if I show the signals, you'll see that there's lots of signals 3 in here. And what I can do, besides changing all these variables, I can simply say, you know what, let's ignore 3. I just don't want to make use of 3 anymore. Let's make it like this. And then the last thing, I saw some articles of you, Stacy, a couple of months ago about trending XMRs, and I believe this one is a trending XMR.
It is. That's why so many people are asking questions about why it looks so chaotic. It's not actually the right type of measure for an XMR chart. Well, you continue to tell that, Michelle.
Yeah, but the thing is that, so you wrote this article about it. So we added this little switch there, which said, oh, wait a minute, is this a trending? You know what? If you do that, then you get a trending XMR chart. So Stacy, there was a little surprise for you. I read the article and I said, oh man, we need to implement this as well. So thank you for the suggestion.
There you go. It is. You did promise a surprise for me, and that is.
There you go. You had to wait all the hour, the complete hour for that. And this is basically it. So you can make the chart in any form you would like to. You can obviously resize it, make it bigger, make it smaller, put other elements around it, and use it in Power BI. So if you have the data in Power BI, you can make the selection. And as said, this is now the automated version of it. But if you want to, you can also add, as you can see here, the target, the central line, the control limits manually. So as I see here in the data, and it's all then based on your input and not our automatic calculation. So the choice is yours.
Tremendous. That is excellent. David says, I love the trending XmR. Manually calculating is a headache. Indeed, it is. It is a headache manually transforming our calculations so that they follow the same underlying trend that the measure's following. Awesome. Okay. Michelle, are you done with that demo? Shall I flip back to the...
Yeah, hey, I can go on for hours, as you know, but I think it's good to leave it with this. Again, if anyone has any questions, they know where to find you, and otherwise they can also reach out to me.
And we're also going to give contact details for you as well. So
Okay.
that'll happen in just a minute. We have had, well, this is typical for me, everyone. I'm really sorry, but I somehow managed to do webcasts where there's more content in there than I had thought. And therefore we always hit the hour before we get to questions. Michelle, have you got a few extra minutes if we want to start taking a few questions?
I'm not in a hurry. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not sleepy yet. So go ahead.
No, that's a worry. I hope you do eventually get to sleep. Okay, so if you want to hang on for another 10 minutes or so, we absolutely will answer your questions. All of the questions that you've typed in already, and we'll continue to type in if we don't get to answer them straight away. I'll be sending them all to Michelle, so there's great ideas there for well, you're not seeing my my screen, I don't think, everybody.
Not yet. No.
Let me just go back to, this is the trick with trying to share presenters. There we go. Does that help?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, success. It's time for questions. Yeah, so I will share all of the questions with Michelle afterwards. So if there's anything else in there that either helps him and the team develop the app further, or can directly answer for you, he'll be able to do that. But yeah, if you've got any more questions right now, please go right ahead and ask them. Michelle, I'm just going to pick out a few for you.
Yep.
Michael's asking, is there a fee for purchasing the chart from the Microsoft apps market?
So the question was, is there a fee to use it?
Yeah, is there a fee?
Okay, yeah. So the visual that you just saw and all the functionality is available within Power BI Desktop. So you can try it whatever you would like to. So for evaluation purposes, it's for free. If you're going to use it in a production environment, we would appreciate it if you would give us something back for it. So the website, I believe, which is also on the last slide of this session, will give you more information. So it's visuals.novasilva.com. And there you see that the visuals, do have a price, because we also want to continue to build these cool reports and dashboard items. So so there's you can start using it for evaluation purposes without having any payment done. But if you're going to really use it in production, we would appreciate it if you would take a real license. Yeah.
Cool. Michelle, Eric is asking, can the upper and lower natural process limits are they're approximating 3 standard deviations either side of the central line. Have you thought about being able to add 1 and 2 standard deviation lines as well? It's not a practice that I do, but I know that there are others who do that.
Yeah, actually, we had some sessions with people that are more deeply into process control, and they actually also raised that question. And I can imagine that if that's something that people would miss, because now you see it always as an area, but we can also there's also an option to make these lines. Maybe it would be an option if we make it lines instead of the area, to simply, or maybe both, that you can actually have an option where you say, okay, well, this is the 3 sigma. I also want to have the 2 and the 1 sigma in there, drawn in there, because in the end, if I can calculate the 3, the 2 and the 1 is easy. So, but right now they're not there yet. But again, if this is something that people really require to make use of it, let me know. The only thing there is that I don't want to build 100 options, because then the visual will be very difficult to deal with for users. But yeah, the 3 to 1 sigma question came up before. So again, if there's more people, then it probably makes sense to evaluate that. Yeah.
And as Roy's suggesting there, if we're followers of Donald Wheeler, it's just stick with the three standard deviation approximation. Where did I see this other question? This one I think was a question for me. Mick said, why use a trending XMR chart when the measure should likely be a percentage change, such as an aim to grow website traffic by 5% monthly, and leave the XMR chart as normally is displayed? Mick, the reason is that I don't blend my targets into my measure values. I keep targets quite separate from my measure value calculation. So I never track percentage change, and I never track things like distance away from my target. I always track the actual number of what's happening, actual website visits, and see how they're going over time. The fact that it's trending upwards is good in and of itself. If I want to make it grow faster, that's where having the trending XMR chart's useful, because then I can see, are my efforts actually making it grow faster than it's currently organically growing by itself. I like to keep targets very separate from the measure values. Okay. Let's see. Blake is asking, is there an option, or would there ever be an option to use a median instead of an average for the central line? Did you come across anything like that in your research, Michelle?
No, well, the thing is, I am a big fan of median lines. The other thing I must say that within Power BI, there's options within any charts to put reference lines in there. So if you would say, I want to see a median line in this chart, independently of the change calculation, etc., but simply a median line for all the elements that you see there, then that's a standard Power BI function. You can simply do that. As far as I understand, but again, Stacey, you know more about this than I do. For calculating the control charts, well, most people I see use the average.
Yeah, indeed. That seems to be the general. I think there are some others, but generally, again, the Donald Wheeler approach is the average. I think Eric was just referring back to having the standard 1 and 2 standard deviation lines as reference lines, because some of the signal rules actually refer to them, like where you've got, and these are more advanced signals too. Eric, I can't remember any of them off the top of my head, but I think if you have so many points that are more than 1 or more than 2 standard deviations away that are consecutively sitting out in that part of the chart, that can be a rule as well. In Pump, we stick with just the basic signals of an outlier, a short run or a long run, but there are more advanced ones. So possibly in the future, Michelle, as you get more advanced users of this, that may be a good reason to include those. Rajat's asking, in our organization, we don't have that many data points. We usually have a maximum of 2 data points. What would you suggest to use as a signal then? Rajat, if you've got 2 data points, you don't have enough to figure out a signal. The difference between 2 data points can be simply due to random variation. And you certainly you won't be able to track any changes over time as you implement improvement initiatives. So for an XMR chart, you need a bare minimum of 4 values for a measure. So if you've just started to measure something that you've never measured before, you have to wait until you've got 5 values of that performance measure calculated. If you're measuring something that only ever has 2 data points, then an XMR chart's just not the tool for you at all. Michelle, Michael's saying, can the MR chart be disabled to just show the X chart?
Yeah, so by default, you only show the X chart. Or does he mean the other way around? Can you only show the MR chart?
No, can the MR chart be disabled to just show the X chart?
Yeah, well, that's what most of the examples I just showed shows. By default, it only shows the X chart. And if you want to, you can add the MR chart to it. But I see most people using it only with the X chart. I see some people also use the MR. So yes, the X chart only, absolutely. That's something you can do. Yeah.
Great. Still scanning through to see if there are any other questions. Nothing's popping out for me now, but like I said, Michelle, I will forward this to you. So if there are any other questions that you're able to answer, that would be great. But I think as far as we're concerned, we might be done here today. Everyone, the replay will be available for you to catch up on for the next week or to share with colleagues if you wish. Here's how you can contact Michel. Reach out to him either at visuals.novasilva.com or email him directly at michelle.decker@novasilva.com. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Like I said, this has been the most popular webcast I've run in some time, which kind of took me by surprise. Hopefully it was okay for you. Normally they're a lot more interactive, but we just had so much coming through I couldn't keep up with it all. And Michelle had great content to share and I wanted to make sure that you got it all. Just raise your hand if this time's been well spent for you. That would be great feedback to let us know. I guess the fact that you're still here is probably an indication of that as well. Thank you. That's so many hands going up. Awesome. Michelle, thanks again. Well, firstly, for building this tool. Secondly, for being so open to evolving it based on what everybody would, well, the most popular things that people would like it to evolve to. And thanks for spending the time at 2 a.m. to share it with us today.
Hey, no worries. You know, you can always wake me up for any chat about these topics. I think, again, I think if we can, and that's also one of the goals that we have. And we would like to make these type of charts more broadly available so that people are finally going to look for real signals instead of looking at these strange arrows or smileys on their dashboards. And hey, we simply want to make a contribution to that. So it's always fun to talk about it, and especially with you, Stacey. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Michelle. Likewise. Stephen Few, I think, will be smiling if he hasn't joined us today. I'm not even sure if he knows about it, but I'll let him know and he'll be very happy that we've kept this collaboration going. Okay, everyone. So we really hope you keep using XmR charts, ideally in something like Power BI now that it's so much easier. But keep looking for that truth in your KPIs and your performance measures. And until our next live event, this is Stacey Varr signing off. Bye, everybody.